Notice a lot of people are relying on shading to express the 3D shape, but part of the reason why we're focusing on line is because you should be able to show it with just a line without relying on shading. If you rely on shading, that means you don't believe that it's a 3D shape either, and so you don't think other people will. So we want to make sure we're all strong in that. And so we're going to say, hey, what is a line? Point A to point B. Simple as that. But an artist line is more complex. Artist line is a story. Your introduction is the control that you have over that line, and the story that you communicate is how you decide to use it. There's different ways to do that, and we'll talk about that. But first, the different types of lines. So we have straight line and a curve. Well, that's the types of line we're going to talk about now. Now, most people would take a ruler, and they think they can't do a straight line without a ruler. But as you can see, this top line, the lighter one because it's in pencil, that's the one I did with the ruler. The bottom one was done freehand. And except for the tapering over here, because it's going to taper when your arm gets past the point where you can keep it straight. Besides that, it doesn't even look like it. It looks like it's a straight line. What I usually do is, as I'm doing my first lines lightly, I go past the point just so that tapering doesn't happen until afterwards. But the next one is we have the curve, and I have a bendy ruler thing. I don't know where I got this, but or even how to use it. But the bottom one is the bendy ruler thing, and the second one is freehand, following it. You can draw these lines nice and clean and simple and beautiful without any sort of straight edge. Part of why I'm doing this is because a lot of us rely and we have crutches that we rely on to try and do a picture instead of, learning what's going to make it happen for us. So that's what I want to do here. So let's talk about the difference between a good line and a bad one. Good lines are, in this case, we want a singular line. So going over it over again is because you're correcting things. You should be putting down the correct line the first time. That's going to take some practice, of course, but if you as you do your over and over, if you don't put your drawing tool down and you wait to put it actually on the paper until you found your good line, then you'll get a smoother line. But it should be deliberate, it should be planned. One of the tips I do is, and I kind of figured this out as I was practicing, is I don't look at the pencil while I'm drawing. I look at the point that I'm trying to hit. It's kind of like they say if you're throwing a baseball or catching a baseball, you got to keep your eye on the ball. That's exactly the same thing we're going to do here. So another thing good lines do is they cross the corners with precision. A lot of people I noticed aren't hitting the corners of, say, the cube. When they have their verticals, it's not hitting the corners that the horizontals make. So you got to make sure that you actually hit that point. And it's going to take practice, but you can do it. And you want to have your angles to be correct. I know I had some problems with the cube to try to get the angles right, but we'll get it. And then another great thing I'd like to talk about is line quality. Now here we have some beautiful drawings by an artist that I really can't pronounce his name, unfortunately. I'll post it in the thread. I think it's, you know what, I don't even want to try because I don't want to mispronounce it. So I'll put it up. But he does these beautiful, little higher up so we can see the feet. There we go. He does these beautiful minimalist erotic drawings, and he only uses the line, but you can still tell exactly what's going on. They are very beautiful, especially this one over here. This one's my favorite. But you can see how the lines move from thick to thin and they kind of give you different feels of different parts of anatomy and everything like that to give it weight. And here her hips and thighs would have more weight, and her butt would have more like fat on it than the rest of her. So this is how he gives her a little weight and plumpness there, which is part of what makes it attractive. You don't want to have the same thickness line throughout the whole thing. So in a little bit, we're going to talk about how to, well, actually, we're going to do it now. Line quality. And we're still using our basic shapes here. We're going to be done with these after this week when we start getting into construction. So, if you look carefully at your shapes, and I'm sure some of us noticed because I saw some people trying to do it, you have points where there's a little shadow right where the ground is. Something like that you'd make right there. That's where you give yourself a thicker line. The same thing happens on the cube. That's happening on the dark side of all of on the shadow side of all of the shapes. You just got that darker little line there. And it happens up back here too. And also, to give stuff weight, you want to have a darker line. It makes it seem like it's setting into the surface. So you're going to always make your bottom lines nice and dark, and then as they go further up, they're going to get a little lighter. Like even the cube, you can start off with, and this is a weird angle for me too, but you can start off, I'm right-handed, but sometimes you got to learn how to draw with your left hand. You could start off with a darker line and then let it taper as you go up to denote that it's heavy at the bottom and lighter at the top, as in, the weight, gravity is holding it down. We'll try that again a little later with another set of dailies or something. But places where it gets lighter, you're going to have lighter lines. So you'd actually have times when your lines are heavy and times when your lines almost vanish, where you get to the highest highlights if it's on the edge. These are called lost and found lines. You want to do that because it gives it variety, and in this way you can actually imply how the light is affecting it without shading at all. So give that a try as you continue, and in time it gets better. So let's take a look. We have one of the dailies here, and it came out pretty well. This person, there is some ghosting, which you want to be careful when you're going over your lines to try and choose your right line. You want to not put the pen down or not put the tool down until you found the line. So wait until you found the line to do it. It looks like you don't know what you're doing if you keep going over and over and over, because every time you put down a new line over the old line, you're trying to correct yourself. So you want to have the correct line the first time you put it down. All right, so, and then most of the corners hit pretty well. This one did not hit. You got to be really careful about how your corners. This line isn't straight either. This line actually, if you try to measure it, which can't really see it, well, I guess I'll have to keep the camera on the left. I thought it'd be better on the right. But that line doesn't go straight, and that's part of why that happened. And then you've got the wrong angle over here on this side. You got to be careful that your parallel lines are actually parallel, which all of these should be completely parallel, and all of these should be completely parallel, because we haven't gone into perspective. So right now we're just using false perspective, which We want parallel lines. Which is fine. And we want to make sure that, you know, our circle, the circle that we use to make the sphere, is nice and round. And of course, I'm losing my roundness, and the easel is moving. Alright, so I really screwed that up. But it's gonna happen, you know. If that happens, normally what I do when I mess up really badly, I don't run and grab an eraser. I just do it over. The second time you do it over will be faster than the first time you did it over. The first time you did it at all. So, you know, get into the habit of not running for your eraser every time something doesn't work your way. You can either find a way to make it work or just do another one. Unless you're working on final lines, that's a different story. You know, you're going to want to erase when you're working on final lines. You're not going to start the whole thing over. I mean, unless it's something simple like this. So, we're going to get back into what line says about you. I got these two examples. And we've got two pictures of the same subject. And when you look at them, there's certain things you can see the differences there. And one major difference that I see is in the quality of the lines. Here you have straight lines where they're supposed to be straight. The curves are accurate and curved where they're supposed to be curved. Everything. It's very meticulous with a lot of attention to detail, and that's what makes it solid. Without any shading whatsoever, you can tell that this object exists in 3D in real life. Whereas the other one on this side, it's you know, the lines are very wobbly. There's no indication of, you know, here we've got nice indication that this is an edge. This is an edge. That these are the edges that actually make up the box that this is made of. And even though this is smooth right here, because you've got these nice edges, you know that this is an edge too, and it makes up the box. And you know that there's another edge back here, and when this snaps shut, it's going to be a complete box. You can tell this right here, that this is a little, very, very short cylinder, and it's sitting inside of another cylinder. You know, everything, the little grooves in there, everything is done so that it looks the way it's supposed to look. Whereas this one, you know, you've got these horrific circles that don't meet. It's just, nothing's even. It's just, it looks a hot mess. There is relying on shading, and even with the shading, it looks completely flat. Because it looks lazy, and it looks, you know, like I said, it looks a hot mess. Personally, I wouldn't be proud of something like this. Even though I don't quite know if I'm yet capable of doing this, this is what I'd strive for. This one wouldn't exactly thrill me much. So that's why, you know, it's so important that where your lines are supposed to be straight, that they're straight. And where you're supposed to have a curve, you know, you do a nice, smooth curve. And if you have it, because here we have a line that goes into a curve, and this whole thing does curve out, but it's still it's so subtle you don't even think about it, and then it curves directly into another line, whereas this just kind of goes around like a shoe. So, you know, you got to be careful of things like that, and make sure that you're just trying to describe the form with the lines. Make sure that you start off with something simple. This guy would have started off with a box. This just starts off as a box, and then he goes from there. Whereas this person started off with just this face, and then they tried to add a side to it, And that doesn't work. You have to start from the actual form of the box and then build it up from there. So, and that's why we started with these forms and these shapes, and it's so important to stick with them, because we can't do complex things until you really understand how those shapes go. It'll make your art so much better. And this is 15 minutes, so I'm going to call it quits, and I'll see you next time.